Hey there, and welcome to another episode of your favorite libertarian. Today we've got a special one for you. We are going to be showing you some footage from and giving a review of MDFI's The Human Element. In case you're not familiar with what the Human Element class is, it's a 2-day class typically hosted at the MTAC facilities in Muncie, Indiana, and it's a force-on-force class. It is a simunitions rounds class with live role players, real-life type scenarios, and it's made to test how you would react in certain situations based on your level of training and your understanding of use of force. That's probably a really dumbed down explanation. If you want a more thorough explanation of what the class is, go to my link in the description or in the pinned comment and it'll take you to their website. You can use my discount code to save some money on classes and you can learn more about the class. But with no further ado, we're going to get into Trek's introduction of the class, and then we'll go through a few pieces that were approved to be shown to you so you can kind of get a look behind the veil and see what goes on in one of these classes. I will also put a disclaimer in here that I cannot show you everything. This is only stuff that's been approved by MDFI. As they are a training company, they need to make sure that they are protecting their intellectual property, so they were very gracious to let me film. If you want to see everything, obviously the best way to do that is to take the class. I highly recommend it. If you want the spoiler alert before this video is over, take the training, take all of their classes. All the classes I've taken so far have been excellent, but this one was a real eye-opener for me. So if you don't want to stick around to the end of the video and you just want to know if I approve of the class and think you should take it, yes I do. Go ahead, click on the link, save some money, sign up for classes. They're great. But if you want to get a little sneak peek and kind of an understanding of how these classes work and get my thoughts throughout the video, then be sure to keep watching and enjoy.
If you take me on a door, you know what's behind that door. If you guys have not been here, well, it kind of sucks to be you because you're going to get thrust in there without a tour like I normally give me on a door. It's awesome to have affiliate partners like Eric and his crew that allow us to come down here, and what you guys are going to see is we can take what a SWAT team was using yesterday and turn it into a convenience store, a gas station, all the way up to, I believe you're going to the grand opening of the Trexco Art Gallery.
The importance of the shoot house environment is to test your flat range abilities. Come in here, get a good assessment of what you're lacking, whether it's processing speed, accuracy under pressure, or just focus. And make sure you make good notes and get back out to the flat range with Trek and the guys and correct it.
Absolutely. Yeah, guys, welcome to the Human Element. So I've been with MDFI now since 2010. Owned the company since 2013. There was nothing like this when I joined MDFI. As a military law enforcement officer, graduate of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, one of the things I learned was very interesting is that there is actual Supreme Court doctrine now in law enforcement that if you simply take cops out and have them qualify on the shooting range and teach them weapon manipulation, but you are not incorporating at the beginning, shoot, no shoot targetry. So photorealistic targets of cell phones, guns, knives, clubs, or if you are not getting your law enforcement officers into NLTA force-on-force scenarios, you are culpable as a law enforcement department if a law enforcement officer shoots the wrong person. But then the Whitmer says, all you got to do is take this NRA class, shoot a pie plate at 3 feet, and you're a gunfighter now. Here's your CPL. And we hear these horror stories. Anybody hear what just happened in Atlanta at the Tractor Supply? In Alabama, the Tractor Supply. It was all over the news. Employees witnessed people with a cart shoplifting some large equipment from Tractor Supply. They started yelling at these people that were shoplifting items from Tractor Supply. The employees were armed. Another customer who was also armed decided to intervene. And then as the vehicle was driving away, both employees and customers opened fire on said vehicle to shoot the tires out. Now the funny part was, the quote that opened was, yeah, it's not a good idea to try to steal things in Alabama. Everybody's carrying a gun. Nobody was arrested that opened fire. Only the guys that were shoplifting were arrested. And it's only because that good old boy sheriff's office didn't see anything wrong with that train wreck that happened, and because nobody in that parking lot was shot that was innocent.
Right.
But that could have gone sideways real quick. So the reality is what we have is a bunch of people that God bless the rights protected under the Second Amendment. No government should be able to tell me, you need to take this training, but we have to hold each other accountable for every round we fire, every punch we throw, and every swing of a knife blade that we may make. Nothing is going to be far-fetched. It's going to be things that are absolutely plausible, and it's happened to lots of people out there. And then we're going to have a chance to let you guys do it individually. You're going to get an individual hot wash after every single run. If it is an absolute train wreck, you may get a chance to do it again depending on time. But then everybody is going to do a hot wash together. No one is going to see it from the other person's point of view, and you're going to be amazed at what we learn when everybody gets to talk about what happened to them. And every person will have gotten the exact same scenario. And we're going to learn a lot about perception. We're going to be the jury in here. We're going to talk about each person's actions. We're going to decide, did it fall under the rule of the reasonable person? Meaning, what would a reasonable, prudent person have done if placed in the defendant's shoes, knowing what the defendant knew at the time in accordance with applicable constitutional use of force? What is the biggest downside when I run a square range live fire class when it comes to the use of force? And I've talked about this, the threat engagement process, a lot. What is the biggest downside for you guys as the student? I say gun.
Yeah.
Right.
Or up. Some of my guys say different things, right? But I generally say stand by, gun. And then it's, oh, kill it, put it down. Well, you're gonna learn, there's a lot of that threat engagement process where I say you cheat yourself by me yelling gun, you have to decide gun. I would rather have the world's fastest processor and the world's slowest draw stroke.
The gear. As far as the gear goes, I will roll in their website where it shows you what is required and what is suggested for the class. In terms of prerequisites, there's suggested and required, and then in terms of gear, there's suggested and required for this one. It's not a live fire type class, so you don't need to bring ammo or a gun. You just need to bring stuff to protect your bare skin, like gloves, a neck gaiter of some kind, a hood or a hat or something to protect the top of your head in case it skims off the top of the protective mask, and clothes that you don't mind getting dirty that cover your arms and legs. Pretty basic, pretty simple. Everything else is provided for you when you get there, and I'm sure there's some questions on what that gear is, so I'll go over that right now. As far as the gear that they provided goes, the big things are going to be the masks and then also the simunition rounds and the simunition guns. We'll start with the masks. So here's what I look like wearing one of those masks. Here's some more footage of the masks. The blue ones were the most popular. They had other ones as well if there weren't enough or you wanted to try a different one. But the most popular were the blue ones because they were anti-fog, double paned, gave you decent visibility, weren't too heavy or bulky, and that's pretty much what most people went with. As far as the simunition rounds go, here's a close-up of what a simunition round looks like. Very similar as far as what it looks like compared to just a 9mm round, with the exception of obviously that blue paint tip. You have to be very careful when loading these into a magazine that you don't damage the paint or like puncture the thin layer around the paint. And you have to also be careful when you're press checking them to make sure that you're not accidentally puncturing that again and, you know, gunking up the works of the gun. They will not work in a regular gun, and regular rounds will not work in the simunition guns as a safety precaution, but you can see the casing looks very similar. Then we'll get to the guns themselves. Now you can see a big line, a big row of Glock 17s, which is what they had. They also had one snub-nose revolver that was a 5-shot. That was a simunition gun. So if you carry a snub-nose that either as backup or as your primary, you had the ability to use that as well. Otherwise, they have everything you need as long as it's a Glock 17. Now for me, I was actually very fortunate in that someone brought this gun, which is a full-size 1.0 M&P, actually had the slide cut to accept the same exact red dot that I had on my gun and let me borrow it. And we just kind of like swapped back and forth between turns for scenarios. He let me change the back strap out to a bigger back strap when I was using it. He let me change his flashlight off of it to my flashlight. And he also let me change the reticle to the reticle that I wanted on the red dot that I normally used. So it was as close as I could get to the real thing, and I was able to use my exact same holster, which was awesome, my Torsion 3.0 for the light and everything, so it carried the same exact way appendix. Was able to get some really fast draws in some scenarios with this setup, and was able to mirror as much as I could my M&P Optics Ready full size M2.0 9mm. So huge shout out to you. I won't say your name in case you don't want that on the internet, but thanks again, really appreciate it. You're awesome. All right, so that's the face mask, the gun, and the ammunition rounds. Now let's talk about some of the other stuff. As far as other gear that they provide for the class, they do also offer substitutions. Now what I mean by that is at the beginning of the first day, they ask you to write down what your EDC is. If you want to know what that is, click on the box up here, and you can see what my EDC is. But let's say, for instance, you carry pepper spray. They give you a can of silly string so that in a scenario, if you would normally use pepper spray in a certain scenario, you pull out the silly string and it gets real silly. Also, if you have a flashlight, like this flashlight, I'll put up here, a video series on it, but you're able to bring your exact flashlight into the scenarios, which came in handy because this is a super bright flashlight. And then if you carry a knife and you have a trainer version that you brought, you could bring the trainer version. If you had medical, like a tourniquet, they had trainer tourniquets that you could bring into scenarios. If you had other medical, they had other like gauze and things like that. I'm pretty sure that was it, but if I forget anything, and you were at the class and you remember, put it in the comment section below. But that's it for the gear. Let's get back to the class.
Before we get into what is going to be an in-depth safety control briefing, a safety control briefing, not just talking about handling NLTA firearms around each other here in this classroom when we're not enrolled, talking about the 4 rules of responsible firearms handling, because you're going to be dealing with real people. So we're going to talk about those 4 rules and how they apply to those scenarios. Talk about medical response, just in case something bad were to happen, and basically discussing a lot of things that go into this class and information you guys need to know. We'll talk in-rolls and out-of-rolls commands here in just a second to make sure that you guys know when you're in a scenario and when you're out of a scenario. But we need to have a medical plan just in case something bad happens. So I'm going to be up on the catwalk for most of the scenarios. I will have my med kit on me. We also have another med kit in there. You guys do not need to have a real world medical kit on you for this class. I'll talk about medical gear here in just a second. If there is a medical emergency, I'm going to be primary on medical. How many guys have taken traumatic wound management training? All right, so if you guys have identified yourself, if we go into a medical emergency, I'm going to take primary, not because I might not be the top medical person here, but I'm going to be the one that sees it, because I'm going to be in God's perch. After that, and we go into a ceasefire of the scenario, I'm basically be calling for any secondary medical. It's any of you guys that just identified yourselves, and we're going to dive on the problem. But once again, the reason I'm primary is because I can see the issue that happened, and then as you guys come in, I can tell you exactly what happened, and we can start working on the problem. For this scenario, there is no evacuation to the nearest hospital. We are going to stabilize in place regardless. We are very, very close for EMS response. I mean, they're usually right sitting outside of the building. So what's going to happen, I'm going to be primary 911 caller if there's an issue. I may designate somebody else if I am unable to do it, or if I am the victim, just somebody go ahead and raise their hand and say, I'm going to take 911. Mind being my backup?
You got it?
Cool. Awesome. So primary, secondary, tertiary, in case that happens. You can absolutely go to grab food if you want. You can go out and have a smoke break. That's cool. If you cross that green carpet, doesn't matter if you go outside, if you cross that green carpet, you cannot step foot on the tile unless you are checked by yourself and a buddy pat down. Eric's got camera systems rolling in this place. If anybody sees you violate green carpet protocol, you're done, and we have to re-sterilize the entire area. So here's what I would suggest. You can go ahead, come on in. You can stand on the green carpet and be like, hey, can someone come on over and check me? That's cool. If there should be always somebody here, but just let somebody know, hey, I'm gonna go on out. Just kind of be ready to listen for me. We've never had an issue with it. The big problem is, don't forget. Okay, it's imagine somebody blowing past airport, that's just a security checkpoint. They have to sterilize the entire terminal. That would literally throw a monkey wrench in everything we're doing here today. So don't be afraid to go outside, but I want you guys to get your head locked in. It takes a millisecond. What happens is somebody goes out to their car, they're grabbing a smoke. They look down, why is my G19 under the seat? And their brain goes, that ain't right. They put it on, they violate green carpet protocol, and that's how something bad gets introduced. We will do our as instructor, as the guy that's going to put you in. I'm going to look at your gear every single time, but I'm human. And never rely on the human element, right? We want to try to make sure that we have as much protection as we possibly can. Any questions on green carpet protocol? If we go into locked door protocol, if Eric decides to leave, he's going to come on by and going to say, hey, Trek, I'm locking you in. I will let all of you know, and what that means is now someone's going to have to wait and lock you out. When you go out, they're going to lock for security purposes, because chances are the only gun is going to be in there running a scenario. And for security of all you guys, last thing I want is you'd have to beat somebody to death at the silencer shop kiosk, right? Okay, so you just go to the door, your partner stands there, locks you out. Now, what's the problem with that? If a partner locks you out, what has to happen now? There's now 2 people who need to get buddy checked because they violated green carpet protocol. Guys, just work with each other. It's a team event to make sure that we're all as safe as possible. Sound good? Yeah.
As you can see, safety is kind of a big deal at these training events, and I would caution you, if you go to some type of training and there isn't a very extensive safety briefing and emergency action plan before you start doing whatever shooting or any type of dangerous stuff that you're going to be doing, leave. Ask for a refund after you're off site, and if you don't get that refund, don't worry about it. The however many hundreds of dollars the class isn't worth your life. Well, on a lighter note, let's set up these next clips that you're about to see. These are a few nuggets from the class. I'll let you go ahead and watch these and maybe glean some knowledge from them as well. And then I'll give kind of my overall review of the class, what my thoughts were for those 2 days of that class, any takeaways that I took away, and then I'll probably do my normal outro and recommend that you go to their website, use my link to save some money, and sign up for some classes. All right, here are those clips.
So we talk in military leadership training. We break people down into what's called capable or incapable, or inclined or disinclined. So when I have somebody that is capable and inclined, I empower them. I say, go be awesome, right? When I have somebody that is capable but disinclined, I motivate them. Say, hey, you're awesome. I need you to just go ahead and have that drive to go do it. When I have somebody that is incapable but inclined, I train them. And when I have somebody that is incapable and disinclined, I command them to do exactly what they need to do, because they need to pull their head out of what we say in military management is that I lead my airmen, for when I was in the Air Force, I would lead my airmen by that motto of reading them inclined or disinclined until military matters say otherwise, meaning blowing up around us, and I am now the leader of airmen in Iraq. I am not going to go, you know what, you're capable but disinclined, I'm going to motivate you. Sergeant Utrecht is going to command you to do exactly what I want. I don't care what your motivation is, and I will apologize to you after we're all alive. So don't ever be afraid. And this is one of the things that's hard for us as polite members of society, is to turn not just the evil on to bad guys, but to be able to show the fangs of somebody that is getting in your way. They're not necessarily an adversary, but they're a barrier to what you're trying to do. And Nick would have been a perfect person to show him what Daddy Bear has, as far as just giving him absolute commands of get the over in that corner, sit the down, put that gun on the ground right now, or I'm going to knock you out. Whatever you had to say, it would be absolutely warranted, because you got a guy bleeding to death on the floor. But there's lots of situations where CPO holder draws with the full intent to shoot somebody with a knife or a gun, and the moment they're getting ready to press that trigger, the guy drops the weapon and changes. Now you have a situation where civilians holding somebody at gunpoint, and that's not unlawful, because they're doing the reasonable amount of force, because a reasonable, prudent person would believe you were getting ready to shoot, they drop the lethal weapon, and then you holster up and they draw another weapon. So that would be silly for us to put the gun away, and you could articulate that pretty easy. Yeah, a lot of this, like I said, this is the stuff that's sexy, right? People just don't know it. This is the stuff to become the expert on. We can argue about what gun is the coolest gun, but if you can't think, doesn't matter what gun you have. You guys are doing absolutely awesome. So hold that in for the next scenarios. You don't have to be perfect, just be reasonable. Don't have to be perfect, just be reasonable.
Also, it was very interesting to see what different people's perspectives were, because at the end of every scenario, there was a debrief. Everyone talked about their experience, what they saw, what they perceived, what they did. And it was interesting to see that human element of how people reacted in high stress situations, including myself. So that was really cool to see and to get everyone's perspective, and then to find out from Trek what really was happening in the scenario and see what kind of weird things your brain does under stress and what it just assumes is happening. So that was really cool and interesting, just like scientifically, to see what was going on there in scenarios where the stress levels are higher than normal and you might be in a different part of the room when something starts happening. I didn't want anyone to get near me and take my gun or try to do something to me, because that could have been a bad guy.
So this plays into reasonableness does not equal correct all the time. Mm-hmm. But if I've got two active, what I could articulate were active resistant people that were being drunk, and after I just burned down a dude in the chaos, these guys keep encroaching on me, and I even point a gun at them saying, "Get back." Well, yeah, maybe a prosecutor would say, yeah, they're not terribly happy with you, but you didn't kill them. And you didn't end up having some other use of force incident. So in the chaos, yeah, there's going to be guns muzzling all over people. It's once I realize that they don't deserve a gun point, I'm get the gun off of them. Yeah. But if I'm doing it, if they're not by verbally, and I think that they might be part of the problem, if I'm like, get back, and they don't, and I have to do this, and they get back, well, I'll apologize later.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know the totality of what was happening at the moment. So I wouldn't beat you guys up on that. But at the moment, you're like, oh, that's not supposed to have a gun on them. That's what makes it right. What do you got? So awesome. Nate.
I kind of had a unique experience in that a lot of the things on the checklist of stuff that you should probably take before taking this class, I didn't have, and I would say it also underlies the importance of when a gun is not an option and the fundamental classes. Because I felt like with those two things, I thought I was going to do way worse than I did, because like, wow, I've never done beyond a door. I've never done any type of like room clearing training, anything like that. And I think just having the mindset pieces and understanding use of force from the when a gun is not an option class, and then having just the basic shooting fundamentals, stuff that I didn't have to think about. I was thinking more about what level of force I needed to use, as opposed to how am I going to, line up the sights, get the hits, all that stuff. So I think I'm probably going to take when a gun is not an option again, just as a refresher, because I found that just like, going through my notes a couple times before class was not enough, especially when that stress kicks in, because I did find in some of those scenarios that the stress affected things. It affected things like, okay, I just did this thing. I shot this person, and now I can't remember who of these people were good guys or bad guys. I just see all these people in the room. Stress does some weird things to your brain. So just the stress induction and getting used to that stress is important, I think. And then the other thing is just having a clearly defined set of rules so that when this happens, then this is merited.
Yeah, there's a reason it's rip it, lock it, dip it, send it, tap rack, unload, reload rack. You can get the same type of thing with use of force. You can know, hey, they're here, I can do this and then do this. Wagano, one of the hardest classes to fill because it ain't fancy and it's not flashy, but I still say it's one of the most important classes that we teach. So that's good feedback on that one. Guys, biggest thing. Thank you so much for coming out. This is the last class of 2022. Even with the economy, we still had a very successful year. Spread the word. We pulled most of our social media off. I did put MDFI on Twitter because I'm supporting the new ownership about freedom of speech. The first time we ever tried to have a Twitter account, we were banned before we ever made our first post, just because we were a gun company. So spread the word. Let your friends know that are the people that ever want to train a little bit about this class. Share with them, because this is how we're going to make more dangerous people the bad guys, right? Having that education. Biggest thing, you downloaded. Is anyone staying overnight? You guys staying overnight? Cool. I'll let you know where you're staying at the Airbnb. You guys can have a beer or something. Make sure before you head home, you're completely downloaded. Everything, shooty, stabby, spicy, zappy, bludgeoning. Make sure you load up. Make sure you're ready to go. I hope you never have to use the stuff you've been training on, but the last thing you want is to have the education but not have the tools on your body when you need it, right? Late great Pat Rogers, you guys have all heard the quote, carry your guns all the time, because the last thing we want to do is be a casualty because we left something critical. It has been an absolute pleasure. I'm getting ready to start my second to last year as live fire instructor, so if you guys want to get some live fire classes with me, definitely get them in the next 2 years, because I'm going to be handing over the reins to the guys. I'm going to be focusing very heavily on use of force training and force on force training. I think that's the future for for MDFI. I'm gonna be hanging out for a while. If you guys want to talk shop, hang out. You're in no rush to get out of here. Other than that, we're gonna come on around, give you guys a alumni card, shake your hand, and wish you guys the very best. It's been a freaking honor, and I look forward to training you guys again. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you again to our role players. Really appreciate it.
Final thoughts. Before I get into the final thoughts, and while I do so, I'll try not to reiterate any of the points I made in the previous clips or things that you saw in the previous clips, because you already saw that. But before all that, I just want to give a big thank you to Trek and his team at MDFI for allowing me to film, and also to MTAC for hosting the event at their state-of-the-art facilities. Alright, so the class itself, let's talk about that. My overall impression of the class is, one, it was extremely safe, a sterile environment the entire time. All the safety protocols were adhered to for those 2 days, which is the most important thing in a class. If it's not safe, you can't really have a good learning environment. Next was going to be the material covered. All of the scenarios were scenarios that have happened in real life at some point to someone or groups of people, etc. So nothing was far-fetched. Nothing was like, oh, this would never happen, this is bullcrap, which was great too, because it's actually preparing you for real life situations. Also, I would say that the role players did an amazing job. Some of them should even probably get an Oscar, as if people care about the Oscars at this point. And I would also say that the facilities were great. They put furniture, a bunch of stuff up so you could just stretch your imagination slightly and you could picture yourself being in a real scenario. As far as other takeaways besides what you already heard, I'm going to be taking the rest of the classes that MDFI offers. I've already taken, at this point, When a Gun is Not an Option, which is very crucial to doing well in this class. Also, You Suck, It's Not the Gun, Foundation Shotgun, Foundation Handgun, and Foundation Carbine. I've also taken low light long gun and low light handgun. So the ones that I need to take now to better prepare myself for when they have a part 2 to this 2-day event, where it's a whole nother set of scenarios, is going to be When Things Go Bad, handgun cover and movement, long gun cover and movement, and then Beyond a Door, which is like room clearing type stuff, but I don't think you're actually getting shot back at. So those ones I kind of skipped and went right to the human element, and there were some gaps in my training that I'm sure if I would have taken those classes, I would have been better prepared. But it was interesting to see, just with my level of training at the time, how I did in those scenarios. And in some cases, I felt like I did great. In other cases, I was like, ooh, should not have shot that guy. In summary, highly recommend this class and really all of MDFI's classes that I've taken so far, and I'll probably recommend the ones that I take in the future because they've got solid instructors, they're safe, and they are really focused on critical thinking, which I think is something that is very important, especially when you're dealing with life or death tools like firearms, and less than lethal stuff as well, and just social situations in general. That's where you're finding yourself when you're armed in society. So again, can't recommend them enough. Use my link, etc., etc. And let me know if you want to see more footage of this type of training in the future. If so, I might have to invest in some type of GoPro type camera so that I can get things from my perspective in maybe some scenarios in the future, or maybe even volunteer to be a role player in Human Element 1, or potentially after I take Human Element 2 in Human Element 2, so you can see the perspective of maybe like an ambushing bad guy, or someone that's in a convenience store and is doing whatever the role player is doing in that situation, and see how the good guy is reacting to all that, and get more of that type of footage. I think that would be that's super interesting to me, and I guess I'm asking if you guys would want to see that too. So let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching, stay free, and God bless.
What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah.